Tonight on What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update Positive Correlations and WildCard segments, we're talking about how an accountant can help you. Do you like saving money? Do you have a side hustle in addition to your regular job? Or are you skipping the regular job altogether and having one or more side hustles? Or are you house hacking? Or do you have a home-based business? If any of these apply to you, or if you're thinking about exploring opportunities, then you will want to watch this show. An accountant is more than someone who can do your taxes for you. They can save you lots of money. Even if the situations I mentioned above don't apply to you, we have some stories about how using an accountant can save you money on this episode of PM Update, so stay tuned. Hey guys, I really enjoy making these videos for you, so if you get any value out of them or know somebody who would, please support us by hitting like, subscribe, and sharing our content.
What the Heck Do I Know presents PM Update with Leah and Mia. And now your host, Leah.
Welcome back to PM Update. I'm Leah. We have two segments in our show tonight: Positive Correlations, where we cover subjects related to project management processes and principles, and WildCard, where we talk about anything and everything. In both, we will be talking about how an accountant can help you. With so many people working in non-traditional positions these days, the need for accounting and tax support is greater than ever. And if you are in a traditional job, you probably get broker statements every year that you don't fully understand how they fit into your tax return. If you have anything but the most basic situation, then you could probably save money using an accountant. Mia, what can you tell us about tonight's stories?
In both of our segments, we will be talking to David Deiderman, a friendly neighborhood accountant who is happy to share his insights with us. In Positive Correlations, we will hear from one of his clients, Richard Klein, who didn't think he needed an accountant at first. In our wildcard segment, junior reporter Josie has an interview with David to get his perspective on the business and what he can do and can't do for you as your accountant.
Thanks, Mia. I love segments that mean I'll be learning something about saving money. Now, for our first quote question in the show, do you know who said, "Don't ever let your business get ahead of the financial side of your business"? Accounting, accounting, accounting. Know your numbers. The answer to this question and David's stories when we return. Stay tuned.
David Deiderman has been an accountant for more than 30 years, and in that time has saved his clients much more money than he has collected in fees for his services. Richard Klein is one of his newer clients, who now says that after working with David, he will never do his own taxes again. Richard first came to see David before the 2019 tax season. A friend had recommended David, but Richard wasn't really convinced he needed one. He had been doing his own taxes for years and didn't think that just because he bought a duplex to house hack and a side hustle as a company name withheld driver, that meant he still couldn't do them. Still, his friend insisted that he needed one, and David came highly recommended, so he made the appointment. After giving David some background about himself and collecting a client organizer to complete, Richard left the office agreeing to David's services and fees and to returning the organizer in a couple of days along with his documentation. Richard was not able to complete his organizer in the couple of days like he promised. He couldn't find receipts for some major repairs he had made to the duplex, and since his contractor did not accept credit cards, he had to dig through old bank statements to get the exact amounts and dates of payment. The organizer also asked for a lot of information he didn't usually need when he prepared his own taxes. It was at this point that Richard started to think his friend was right and that he might be in over his head trying to do his own taxes this year. He called David's office and let them know it would take him a little longer than he thought to complete the data he was putting together, and scheduled a review appointment for the next week so he could go over the organizer and income and expense information with him face to face. Richard and David went over all the information in the organizer, and since Richard was new to owning investment property, David asked some follow-up questions to make sure he had the full picture of what had been spent acquiring, repairing, and maintaining the property. They also went over the cost of doing business expenses like advertising and cleaning. When Richard left that appointment, he was pretty sure he had made the right decision. David got him thinking about money he had spent that he hadn't even considered would be a write-off. He decided to go through his credit card and bank statements one more time to make sure he hadn't missed anything. He made a spreadsheet of all the expenses he could find, including the ones already accounted for in the organizer, and sent that over to David's office the next day. After that, he just had to wait. Just to make sure he was doing the right thing, while he was waiting, Richard decided to do his own tax return and compare it with the one that David prepared to see if he really was saving money. Tax season is pretty crazy for all accountants, especially the ones who meet with clients as well as prepare returns. Richard was late with his initial paperwork, so his return had been bumped down the schedule. Still, it took less than 2 weeks to get his answer. When he got the client copy of his return back for signature from David's office, he was shocked. David's version of his return was $5,000 more than the one he had prepared. Richard compared them page by page and realized he had completely missed taking depreciation on anything, and a few other little things that added up. Richard happily signed the document and paid his fees so that his return could be submitted electronically by David's office. He was now convinced that having an accountant was in fact necessary for him, and he was never so happy to be wrong in his entire life.
David wasn't surprised at all by Richard's responses. He sees this kind of thing all the time. He says the most important thing that he has encountered is the stigma that a CPA is too expensive for me. Having a competent and experienced accountant can actually save you money. He said he's seen it hundreds of times over the years where he was able to come up with a lower tax liability by more than enough to cover his fee. Remember, experience matters. I bet Richard is wishing he had been using David's services for years after that kind of a return. Thanks, Mia. Now, I don't know about you viewers, but I wouldn't have been hesitating if my taxes were as complicated as Richard's, and I wouldn't have dreamed of trying to do them myself. Even if you don't have a complex situation like Richard, having an accountant can probably save you money. Try it out sometime. Meet with one who does free consults, give them all your data, and do your own tax return to compare. You probably won't have a $5,000 difference like Richard, but I bet they can still save you money. Now, to answer our quote question from earlier in the show, do you know who said, "Don't ever let your business get ahead of the financial side of your business"? Accounting, accounting, accounting. Know your numbers. It was billionaire businessman, TV personality, and owner of Landry's Inc. and the Houston Rockets, Tillman J. Fertitta. In the second half of our show, we will be hearing straight from David how he feels about his profession and what he can do for you. We also have another quote question. Do you know who said collecting more taxes than is absolutely necessary is legalized robbery? The answer to this question and Josie's interview with David when we return, so stay tuned. Due to COVID, David wasn't able to meet with us in person, but agreed to appear via remote camera to share his knowledge of accounting. He provided some great insight into what to expect if you do hire an accountant. And as we mentioned earlier, he really is your friendly neighborhood accountant. David, I think most people don't think they need an accountant because their taxes aren't that complicated. So what can you tell us about why we need an accountant or how you can help the average person?
My famous expression is, the most expensive tax preparer you can use is yourself. Very few people have the experience necessary to avoid making errors or omissions that will actually cost them money. One of the most common would be a home-based business or being paid as an independent contractor rather than as an employee. These open possibilities for taking advantage of deductions that would not be common knowledge and therefore would be omitted by an inexperienced preparer. I put doing it yourself in the same category as using a chain tax service, since the person helping you at a chain tax service will most likely not have any more experience than you do. Most of them only receive rudimentary training before tax season and then are unleashed on the public to prepare tax returns. Do you have investments? If so, Most people don't understand their broker statement enough to properly prepare their own return. If you own a rental property, again, most people would miss potential deductions and actually cost themselves tax dollars. Although fewer people use itemized deductions due to the increase in the standard deduction, there are circumstances that will put people over the standard deduction, provided they know what to look for. Even if all you think that you have is a W-2, there are decisions that can be made regarding such things as funding an IRA.
Well, that sounds like it probably applies to more than half of the population. If a person was going to see an accountant for the first time, what do you recommend that they be prepared to discuss the first time they meet with you?
New clients will need to be ready to inform me of their complete situation. From their personal contact information and dependents that live with them, or even if they don't live with them, I will need to know their tax history, since many things carry forward from one year to the next. They will also need to discuss details about their occupation. Don't forget about college-age dependents. The tuition credit can make a huge difference for most taxpayers.
Well, that sounds pretty comprehensive. I understand that tax season is pretty crazy and stressful for you. What do you wish all of your clients knew about what it takes for you to complete a tax return, or any other service you provide?
In order to complete a tax return correctly, I need all of their information. If I don't know that something applies to them, I can't use it to help them reduce their taxes. Over the years, I have had many times that I discovered something important only by listening to a comment the person made and asking if something applies to them.
So when a person does decide they need an accountant but don't happen to live near you, what should a person look for as a sign of a good, reputable accountant?
The IRS actually publishes a list on www.irs.gov showing licensed or registered preparers. If a person is not on the IRS list, I would be suspicious. Look for an accountant's credentials. The CPA or enrolled agent statuses mean that the person has passed rigorous testing and maintains continuing education to stay current with tax law changes. Another method of choosing an accountant would be to ask your friends and coworkers if they are happy with the person they are using. I have had clients tell me that they have had people tell them that they should use the person they have been using, and it turned out that both of them were using my services.
What about tax planning services? What kinds of things should they be prepared to discuss with you, and can you explain a little about what that is?
Tax planning is all comprehensive. The most important thing to remember is that everyone has different goals in life and a different sense of what methods are comfortable for them. The biggest planning is for potential retirement. The means of stretching out their finances to provide for their life expectancy is only one consideration. Do they want to provide for benefits to their heirs? Do they want to spend everything before they pass away? Again, each person is different and has different goals. So it is important that they be prepared to discuss everything related to their life and finances.
What are some common misconceptions or misunderstandings about what you can and can't do for your clients?
One of the most amazing misconceptions I've heard over the years is that people think that I work for the IRS. They need to understand that I work for them. I am not able to access IRS records about their private information, but I can help them retrieve it themselves through the IRS website. I cannot reduce their IRS debt, as some of the advertisements make it sound. They are misrepresenting the offer in compromise process, which is something I can help them with, but is not a guarantee of tax forgiveness. Be wary of any advertisement that implies that someone can negotiate your IRS debt away.
Thanks so much for being here to answer these questions for us today, David. I think that is all we have time for right now. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we get to have you on as a guest again soon.
Thanks so much for inviting me, and I was happy to do it.
The perception seems to be that accountants are only for rich people who are trying to avoid paying taxes, and this is simply not the case. Accountants are for everyone trying to save a little money by paying the amount required and not more than the amount required. They can also help with long-term planning and goals that you have set for retirement. Every little bit helps, and when it comes to retirement planning, you need both a financial advisor and an accountant on your side, because they are both a part of the puzzle and bring different expertise and advice. I completely agree, Mia. Thanks to David for agreeing to the interview and our junior reporter, Josie, for bringing it to us. For many in the U.S., taxes take a huge chunk out of their income. And while they are necessary to provide services in our nation and communities, that doesn't mean we should be paying more than our fair share. The complex rules surrounding what you are supposed to pay are a bit too much for most of us to understand. I know I don't understand them all myself, and that's one of the reasons why I use an accountant. Now, for the answer to our second quote question of the day, do you know who said collecting more taxes than is absolutely necessary is legalized robbery? That was Calvin Coolidge, the 30th President of the United States. That's all for What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update with Leah and Mia and our positive correlation and world wildcard segments for this week. Thank you for watching, and see you tomorrow on our next episode of PM Update. Good night. Don't forget to support these videos by hitting like and subscribe. I love seeing comments too.